Welcome back to Close Up. Housing remains the top issue for voters in New Hampshire, and lawmakers in Concord are once again debating a variety of different bills to help alleviate some of the pressure in the market. A new housing supply coalition recently launched to advocate for major changes at the state level. We heard from that group here a couple years ago, but there is, of course, another side of the issue when it comes to whether these changes should be made at the state or local level. Here to discuss that this morning is Margaret Burns from the New Hampshire Municipal Association and Representative Len Turcotte of Barrington. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Ms. Burns, it feels like there is more momentum than ever to do something big in this legislative session, to especially help with zoning and lot sizes and things like that. But the communities you represent are saying, hey, wait a second, we have a voice here and we shouldn't be ignored.
That's correct. NHMA represents 100% of the cities and towns in New Hampshire. So all 234 cities and towns in New Hampshire are members of the association. And one of our overarching policies is to support and defend local control. And as part of that, zoning is a huge aspect, right? So the legislature saw fit many years ago when it established the Zoning Enabling Act to delegate that authority to municipalities as opposed to retain that authority at the local level. And they did it wisely because they recognized that we are talking about local decisions that affect the unique character and dynamics of a specific community. And there's a lot of logic in leaving those decisions to the municipalities. And in most cases, when we say leave the decision to the municipality, we're actually talking about the voters, the people who make up that municipality, who vote at town meeting, who are making these decisions about what they see for the future of growth and development for their community.
And Representative Turcotte, one of the big points of debate has been SB 84, the Starter Homes Act that already passed the Senate after a pretty big fight. At first glance, though, it seems like this is going to face a much steeper road to success in the House.
I believe that's correct. I mean, for me, the underlying issue on all of this is what Margaret just talked about, and that is local control. All the municipalities currently have the ability to change the 15, 20 bills that are in the House this session. Municipalities have the ability to do that on their own already through the warrant article process. We have individuals and some, I would call special interests, that are trying to force one-size-fits-all regulations, zoning, onto the municipalities from the State House. That's not the way we need to operate. We need to be from the local level, not a few individuals in Concord telling municipalities what to do.
In some ways, this is kind of like throwing yourself into oncoming traffic with as big of an issue as this is, Ms. Burns. You know, you're in the unenviable position of saying no on an issue where a lot of people want to see big change.
I agree with that, and here's what I'll say about that. Municipalities, first and foremost, are working to review zoning ordinances and to make changes that are appropriate and that can support additional or incentivize additional housing be built. That's already happening at the local level, and unfortunately all we hear about in the rhetoric on these bills is that municipalities aren't doing it, that they aren't doing it enough, or they aren't doing it correctly. And usually what that means is they're not doing it in a way that, as Representative Turcotte referenced, in a way that sort of meets the desires of the special interest groups that are advocating strenuously for these zoning mandates. One of the important pieces of this entire discussion, I think, is the fact that part of the Zoning Enabling Act is an obligation on municipalities with planning boards to engage in master planning. And what that means is that each municipality is looking at its own local community values, it's taking into account its own resources, and it's planning out into the future for smart and responsible growth and development that also takes into account the unique beauty and natural resources of New Hampshire, as well as the needs of new and current residents. And what the state does not have is a master plan, and it frankly shows in the number of zoning mandates we've seen, and even in the drafting of those zoning mandates, including language that conflicts internally, conflicts with other zoning mandates, and conflicts with existing statutes that will really throw municipalities into chaos if all of these zoning mandates are passed as they're written.
You represent Barrington. How does your opposition to these bills square with the views of your constituents?
Excellent point. Just this last March, our town had a number of zoning changes in the warrant articles. And one of them was actually to change the minimum size of a lot from our 80,000 square feet, roughly under 2 acres, up to 3 acres, which is actually going against what one of the bills, SB 84, wants to do. They want to put a mandate at 1.5. I actually was called and asked to put out a paper against that, and I said, look, it's up to my town and my people, our citizens of Barrington, to make the decision on what we want to do with our zoning. I was personally agnostic to which way the bill went, but for me to get on and tell my citizens, hey, you shouldn't do this because somebody wants to put in a big development, I'm not going to do that. And the town of Barrington, we passed the one I'm talking about, the 3-acre minimum, by like 60%. So I'm not opposed to ADUs, I'm not opposed to anything, but it's up to the individual municipalities to make that decision on their own.
You are among the more liberty-minded reps there at the State House. Why shouldn't the property owner or the individual's rights take precedence in these situations?
Excellent question also. So a lot of the liberty reps, which I tend to fall in line with, I'm a conservatarian, I go by, but they're couching this as a libertarian, giving property rights back. The problem is you give property rights back to the individuals or special interests they want, but they don't think about the property rights that are being taken from their abutters or their neighbors. I don't know where you live, Adam, but let's just say you live in a little cul-de-sac and you've got a neighbor on either side of you. The ADU bill would be a great example. All of a sudden you've got a detached ADU going up beside you on your neighbor's property, and you go, wait a minute, when I bought my house, my zoning said this, and now all of a sudden I've got rentals on this side of me, because that's what the purpose of a lot of these detached ADUs. And then a few years later, you've got one on the other side, and before you know it, your single-family neighborhood has turned into a rental neighborhood.
And I think voters are going to be surprised if these zoning mandates pass. I think in the years to come, voters are going to be surprised at what's going to happen to their communities, and they're going to wonder what happened to the votes that they took and the values that they expressed, and why they've been overridden by essentially large centralized state government.
And you mentioned some of the communities that are tabbed as unfriendly to development, but what are the infrastructure realities that exist that sometimes limit this, whether you want it or not?
It's such a great question, because part of this discussion for us has always been that the infrastructure is necessary to sustain development. And part of our advocacy to the state has always been, if the state wants to address the shortage in housing, there needs to be a partnership between the state and local governments to address it, not just shifting it downshifting it all to municipalities and saying it's your fault and it's your problem to solve it. And so one of the big pieces that we've advocated for is consistent funding for grants like state aid grants that support infrastructure for wastewater projects. And we've also supported funding through the Housing Champions Program and Invest NH to continue to build up that economic development and to show a partnership between municipalities and the state in addressing this.
Yeah, the water, sewer, and roads are always a piece of this that is less discussed, but certainly just as important. So, Margaret Burns from the Municipal Association and Len Turcott, representative from Barrington, thanks so much for joining us and having
Thanks for having us.
Today.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.